My name is Mark Chalmers, and I'm President and CEO of Energy Fuels. And Energy Fuels is a company that is a critical mineral company built around uranium mining. And I think today we're here mainly to talk about uranium mining, Matt. So I'll hand it on over to Marty.
Hi, I'm Marty Tunney. I'm the COO of IsoEnergy. So ISO is focused on our flagship uranium asset in the Athabasca Basin, where we've got the highest grade uranium deposit in the world. And secondly, focused on getting back into production at our mines in Utah that we acquired from Energy Fuels. And we've got a toll milling agreement at their White Mesa mill.
Right. Real miners, real producers. This should be a good conversation because I think there's a lot of chatter out there. We've got to start with the macro. Executive order coming down from Donald Trump, indicative of good times ahead and maybe permitting reform. What do you think? What have you made of it, Mark?
Well, again, I think it just shows that the ongoing support by both parties, actually, for nuclear power and reestablishing our ability to mine and produce and nuclear power, including right on through nuclear power, small modular reactors, is gaining momentum. And I think that's the key thing. Momentum, bipartisan support, the focus on baseload energy, data centers, growing demand.
Yeah, and I think Mark nailed it. This is, one of the few topics where you've got bipartisan support is on the nuclear front. And I think, these EOs that are coming out of the White House are really showing that the government recognizes that there is going to be a crunch here, and they need to know that there is going to be a safe supply from within the United States. And there's only a handful of folks that can deliver.
Well, that's for sure, because I think the big conversation at the moment is not around demand. I think we've got enough of that. It's well, we want more, but we've got enough. It's supply. You guys are, you're chasing uranium. You've done the deal together with the Tunney mine. You've got the tolling agreement in place, so when it comes out of the ground, you can process it. So again, Mark, when you're sort of reading the script out there, is the supply going to be there when it's needed?
Well, I think I've told people many times, I don't know where it's going to come looking out 5 or 10 years, because some of the best deposits are being mined right now, and they're in depleting themselves in a number of cases. So I think that the real issue here is that as you increase demand, as some of these larger projects start to deplete themselves, you got to replace those pounds. And when you replace those pounds, the cost have to cover to find those pounds, to permit those pounds, to build that infrastructure required, mine it, and then reclaim it. So that's why I think that the future for uranium particularly is looking very bright, because you got to replace those pounds with the ones that are coming out of the ground right now, while demand is increasing.
Right, Marty, ISO, the only company that have a tolling agreement with Energy Fuels. There is no one else. I think there's a buying schedule with Western, with Energy Fuels for whatever it's 25,000 ton. Why was that important for you to kind of get done now?
Well, if you don't have access to the White Mesa mill and you're a conventional hard rock miner in the USA, you don't have anywhere in the next 5 to 7 years to process your ore. You've got to go out and either refurbish a mill completely, or you've got to build a mill from scratch. So getting those mines, also required having access to that mill. Otherwise, we're out of luck. Mark's got a great operation there within trucking distance from those mines, and it makes sense to deliver the feed there.
Right. And by the way, do jump in with each other, and you can build on your own, each other's comments. Don't need to wait for questions from me, but just kind of keep that kind of macro thematic going. Is the other big point at the moment is that spot price is not reacting. People are looking at spot price. They're not looking at term price. We've talked about catalysts for 5-6 years now, and it's just not moving the dial at the moment. What's going to move the dial in the next 12, 18 months, Mark?
Well, I think that one of the things going to move the dial is that people are short on uranium. I think a number of companies, particularly newer companies, have over contracted, and I think a number of them are struggling. And I think that some of the utilities are getting concerned that some of these newer producers are not going to fulfill their contracts. And I think that bodes well for projects that are proven, and projects and companies that can deliver. So I think it's really, really social to go to a cocktail party and say, we're going to be a uranium producer, and that's my goal in life. And then I always say, are you serious? Is that really what you want? Because once you become a producer, people will measure everything you produce and what it costs you to produce. So I think the key thing is, I think people have overcommitted, and I think you're seeing it with some of these other companies, and that's a tough position to be in, particularly if the price of uranium is starting to move up, which it is moving up, not quickly, but 63, 65, 72, that's a pretty big move if you're contracted at 60.
Yeah, and we've seen some of the companies that have started production haven't quite reached the levels that they need to get to. I think where they had predicted to the market, or at least forecast. But you talk about other things that might catalyze a higher price. The Uranium Producers of America has worked on this Russian uranium ban for a very long time. And now it looks like they might bring some other countries into the mix, where it looks like uranium was being, circumvented. The process was being circumvented, and it was being shipped through other locations. It looks like that's going to be cut off. But that's really, been more of a uranium waiver process to allow uranium into the U.S. from Russia, and with a ban at the end in 2028. But I think what's really going to happen prior to that is, I think they're going to shut the gates anyhow. I mean, China is a country that can build a reactor in 18 months from making a decision. They're ramping up. They're in competition with U.S. utilities for uranium. And you're going to see a bifurcation of the market. And, frankly, producing uranium responsibly from an environmental standpoint costs more. And you've got to, as Mark said, cover the costs of going out and finding uranium, building a project, and processing it. And even though we've got contract prices sitting above spot right now, it's just not enough to be meaningful. And we could go out and start producing uranium today and be trading dollars. We're fully permitted. We've got a mine that's ready to go, but we're not interested in trading dollars, and we're just going to continue to get the mine, in a better position. And when we hit those numbers, we're going to start delivering feed to the mill.
But that's the kind of constant refrain from most CEOs of most uranium juniors at the moment, is like, we need this incentive price. We've got to hit this incentive price. But it's a moving target. It has been, in the last 5-6 years, I've seen it, move from $45 to $100, right? And I know we've had inflation and labor shortages and energy prices going up. There's been lots of reasons why that is the case. I mean, Mark, you seem to be suggesting maybe some companies would prefer if they didn't have to get into production.
Yeah, look, I think from my perspective, an incentive price is north of $100 a pound. And going higher with all the challenges it takes to get things up and running. Companies like ourselves, we've got some projects like Pinyon Plain that are very high grade, low cost, and have been built for decades. That you're not counting those costs. We can respond earlier, but when you look at new production, you need these higher prices. But I also want to add another, I think, material catalyst that's out there is this recent executive order on the Section 232 on processed critical minerals that Trump signed, and the Department of Commerce is starting the process there, because again, it reflects and includes uranium, and certainly those that are maybe watching this video, our company filed a Section 232 6-7 years ago, and we got it very, very close to getting it across the line. But I think right now we've got a better chance of getting it across the line now with this most recent 232, which includes all critical minerals, processed critical minerals in the United States.
Right. But just coming back to that incentive price thing, which again, I want to kind of focus on the things that people are talking about. So incentive price, okay, $100 plus. But if it does get to $100 plus, does that mean that the tap is turned on? There'll be a lot more production out of North America?
I don't think there's going to be a lot more production. I think those that can produce will. And I think there's a limited quantity of people who can produce at that price. I think for, Energy Fuels, and I don't want to speak for Mark, they're obviously in a great position. And I think right behind them is us. We're in a fantastic position. We've got a fully permitted project that we can deliver feed. We've got a mill to go to, and not many others can say that. And I think others that think their incentive price is $100, it's not going to be 100, but for companies like us, it really is.
Okay. I mean, you obviously made that choice, Marty, to prioritize high grade versus near term production. You've got obviously I'm referring to the world-class grade wise Hurricane project. You could have gone chasing headlines, but you're saying, no, let's get into production. That means more.
It's a bit of both. I mean, we don't have to do one thing at a time. And we certainly do have a very large drill program going on up there to expand the resource. But in the meantime, we've got a full team down in the States that's looking at options to reduce costs. So, it's a two-path process here.
Right. Okay. And Mark, I'm just talking all things topical. Okay. Comment from a CEO in the market says he might be shutting down White Mesa in terms of uranium production. Is that right?
White Mesa usually runs under campaigns. And certainly we have the ability to run uranium, vanadium, but we also have the ability to run rare earths. And we will produce what we get the biggest margin on. Is what we're going to run through, unless we get some support from the government that says process rare earths over uranium. Right now, I don't need any other incentives to make money other on uranium, because we have low enough cost structures and we have the economics and the contracts to deliver real nice margins even at these current prices. Now, again, I hope and I believe the prices are going to continue to go up for the reasons we've discussed already. And when it comes to the rare earths, we're basically told the government that we can produce, what rare earths do they want? Tell us what they want, what the quantities are. And if the incentive's there and that incentive's greater than what we can make on uranium production, we'll consider it. And then we might shut down the mill for a period to process rare earths.
Okay, so campaign just means a period of time, just to be clear on the terminology, right? There's a conversation with the government potentially, but the government aren't necessarily going to be buyers there, are they?
Well, the government's really starting to focus on all these critical elements and having stockpiles and supplies that are really isolated from having to buy from China or Russia or others. And, I think they could be buyers. I think that, like the Department of Defense, are focused on having at least certain supplies of these elements that we're dependent on from China. And even with some of the proposed bans from China on some of these elements. So, right now we just have to see what they want, right? If they want it, we can kind of rejig ourselves, accordingly. But in the meantime, we're going to be producing uranium.
Okay, so just to be clear, so if the government is, I think these executive orders are indications of intent, not necessarily in law, but in intent, and that gives signals to buyers of critical minerals that maybe it would be a good time to have a conversation with you. Okay, because I'm trying to work out how you kind of quantify what is enough in terms of to maybe able to make that switch to change that feed into the plant. Have you got a sense of that?
Right now, and I have to be careful certainly of forward-looking statements, but we think we've got margins that are maybe 100% on uranium right now going forward costs. So we're not going to go produce rare earths for a margin of 10%.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And obviously, like you produced uranium last month, and was that was the beginning? I presume you're producing uranium this month as well.
Yeah. We'll keep the market update. We did 150,000 pounds last month. We had a really big month this month, and I hope to update the market accordingly on that. One of the biggest impediments we've had is just getting enough trucks to haul the ore to the mill. And so we're slowly ramping up our trucking capability. and we're up to about 8 trucks a day, and we're trying to get to 10, 11, 12 on average. It will be able to keep up with the miners. Right now, the miners can mine faster than we can truck, and that's kind of a unique dilemma that we've had at the moment. But even saying that, it's surprised me on the upside on the amount of pounds of uranium that we can move out of the Pinyon Plain mine at this point in time.
Right. Okay. Well, let's bounce over to Tony M. Obviously, Marty, I had the pleasure of going to the mine, going in the mine. I saw the state then. How have things progressed since I saw you in September?
Since you were there in September, I mean, physically, not much has changed. What we have been doing is just working in the background, working on the mining plans. We've delivered some material to various companies we've been working with to look at the ore sorting, which has the potential to reduce what we would need to deliver by truck to the mill by about half. So substantial cost savings there. But right now we're looking at doing something called the split shooting, where we blast out the waste and then we blast the ore to keep it separated. That might also allow us to just do a single blast and reduce your cost there substantially. So it's all been about trying to really reduce those costs so that we do pull the trigger, we're ready to go, and we've got the best price possible, or the best cost possible.
Right, and how much more work have you got to do? How much more time are you going to spend on that one? Because obviously people are super excited about the thought of you being a producer in the US at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a substantial more amount of work that's required. It's just it's a bit of timing. So just waiting for some results to come back. But really, it's also just watching the market too and waiting for that price to climb. Like I said, right now, and we don't have a 43101 out that specifies the cost, but we're probably in a good position now to trade dollars, as I said. And there's no point. I mean, why would we want to give this away right now to a utility or a buyer when we can sit on it? We know that 12, 18 months from now, when the crunch starts really coming, that we can start putting some money into to the bank and into the pockets of our investors. So
okay, and I guess with the comfort of knowing you got that guy on your team to process it when you're ready to go. Yeah, it helps, doesn't it? It does. And obviously, like ISO have been fantastic with their kind of M&A activity in the last couple of years. Do you see more of that happening kind of across the board? Are we going to need to see more of that? You guys have been great at accessing capital in the market to do that and doing deal structures that allow that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any surprise to say that we're constantly looking towards that. We've got a management team and a board that's loaded with people who have spent a good part of their career doing M&A. Frankly, the market probably doesn't want 20 individual companies. There's some good assets out there that are sitting, good operators, but maybe people that aren't the best at getting capital to move things forward. So those are opportunities that will pop up for us. We're not going to do anything that's not going to be accretive for the company. Or our investors. So, just watch the space, and I think people will be pleasantly surprised as we move forward.
Right. And where are you looking? Because
no change. I mean, we're going to stay within Canada, US, Australia.
But out of those three children, who do you think it makes the most sense to focus in on?
I think people are very excited about the US. But that being said, you can't pick it, right? So when the right one comes up, we'll go there first.
Right. And just again, Marty, just with you, like I say, you guys have been really good at accessing capital, explaining what you're trying to do, building that story. Are you starting to see more sophisticated investors? And are they asking more sophisticated questions, or is it still an education process?
It's a bit of a mix. I think in general, I mean, Mark's been at this longer than I have, and probably knows quite a few more people on the buy side than I do, and I'm sure he can pipe up on this. But I think people are better educated now. I think there's new people that are coming into the space that are willing to be educated, which I think in the past, that wasn't the case. I think there's people who was just, uranium, I don't get it, don't want to deal with it, move on. Whereas now I think there's people going, hey, this is real. I see what's coming out of the government. I see what, you've got the tech industry wanting to sink a bunch of money into this on their side from a nuclear standpoint. And people recognize that this is real. So they want to be involved.
I think what people are realizing is you have to have a growing nuclear sector to achieve all the goals that people need for baseload energy, data centers, reducing carbon emissions. And I think that's the reality that people are coming to. And I think the phobia, and there was a lot of phobia when you have a black swan over the last 3-4 decades that really scared people. And then now after a few black swans, we've seen that the safety track record of nuclear power is exceptional. It's exceptional, and really the only black swan that we had was Chernobyl, and that was a Russian reactor, and it didn't have containment. But when you look at anything else, like even Fukushima, nobody died from nuclear power. So I think you've got 50 years of outstanding safety record in nuclear, and people are appreciating that you've got to have it in the mix. And even people that were opposing nuclear for decades are coming across the line, realizing it's a better alternative.
Yeah, I mean, just back on Tunney, what I did mean to ask you, Marty, which was like you got your permits in place, but we've seen recently the support around permitting. Anfield put out a note about turning something around in 2 weeks. So do you feel like people have kind of caught up with you? You had an advantage around the permitting timelines, etc. From the guys behind you. Do you feel this is going to allow them to catch up with you, or do you treat that as an asset that you can take advantage of elsewhere within the portfolio?
I think there's, I'll say two things about that. I'll say it is something we could take advantage of. We're in a good position with our permits at all three of our U.S. assets, so don't necessarily need a lot of help on that front. I think if you take a closer look at that asset that Anfield had, I think you'll recognize that was a lot further along than most people realize. It wasn't like they went out and applied for the permit the day before. They'd done several years of studies in order to apply for that permit. So there's a lot of work that goes into this, and those are only federal permits. There's also state permits that people need to apply for, and well, I think it's a very positive mark by the administration to do these things and show their commitment to moving projects along more rapidly, and it shows their support for nuclear and uranium. I think for us, it's not a necessary thing right now.
I want to add to that is, where's the ore going to go? Where's the ore from that? If they start mining, it's got to come to White Mesa. Sure, you got the Shooting Canyon, but it hasn't ran for 45 years. It doesn't have a vanadium circuit in it. It's going to take a long time to get it permitted. So if they mine anything in the next 5 years, it's got to go. There's one place for it to go, is White Mesa. So, and then as I said, we discussed that we have this buying schedule with Western. We may have some other buying schedules with others. It's not easy, even though there's a couple other mills that have been sitting for decades and decades, don't have tailings, you don't have a lot of the equipment that's required to start up, don't have all their permits in place. White Mesa is in a unique position to still take this leading role on conventional in the United States. And you literally don't want to drive by the White Mesa mill and drive another 100 miles or whatever either. So, we're well positioned. The mill was built to be a toll milling facility or buying facility when it was built. And it just fits in that part of the world and has the capability to continue to fill that role for a long time.
I mean, what do you think of that, Marty? Do you think? I mean, obviously, you've got that partnership already, so you're kind of fine. But what are the others going to do if you weren't in this position? What would your options be?
Well, one, I'd be looking, if we didn't have a mill that was, an asset that was already fully built out, and hundreds of millions of dollars spent on capex. I'd probably be looking at my asset going, where am I going to come up with $100 million to build a mine? And then secondly, I'd probably be doing what everyone else is thinking right now. How much room does Mark have at the mill? and reaching out to Energy Fuels.
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of a game to be played there. I think getting some kind of agreement would enhance the value of the company, presumably, and obviously enhance their the valuation for sure. Right, okay. In terms of sticking with you, Marty, in terms of discussion with kind of government agencies about strategic designations, I mean, where does Tunney M fit into your kind of broader conversations about your US portfolio at the moment, and is that something you can build on?
I think when we talk to governmental agencies, everyone's excited to see, and I mean, especially in the state of Utah, it's unbelievable the kind of support you get for mining in general and for nuclear and for uranium. And it's there's a handful of states that have, they want to go cradle to grave on nuclear, and Utah is one of them. Very supportive, looking to see what we can do. And when we look at across our portfolio at other locations, people are excited to see us deliver there, and it might help us out in other locations that may not be as friendly as Utah is.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a few states which are going to stand out for sure. I mean, Mark, you've got a pretty big portfolio of assets at varying stages of permitting. Are there any kind of jurisdictions which are going to stand out for you? Which states do you like?
Well, I mean, I think Utah and Wyoming have always been very, very supportive. In Arizona, I mean, we've had our challenges, but I think we've gotten through those challenges, and certainly, the agreement we have with the Navajos was very important to us in the region because we worked together, came up with a better outcome, including cleaning up some of the Navajo Nation abandoned mines that didn't have anything to do with us. And in some of these other more populated states like Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, it's a bigger lift. Utah is still relatively small. Wyoming's relatively small. Not all these jurisdictions are equal when it comes to what it takes to get projects up and running. But I mean, no matter what you do in each of those jurisdictions, you have to do it right. You have to have the right engagement, the right regulators, and the right location, because locations could be a challenge as well too. When you get close to national parks or monuments or whatnot. So, I think when you look at it, all in all, the Western U.S. is better than other parts of the U.S. and other countries. But particularly Utah and Wyoming are particularly encouraging of mining and development, exploration, more so than others.
Okay, and Mark, you've just signed some long-term utility contracts through 2030, I think. What do you think the utilities are waking up to the supply issue? Do you think that they are keen to have conversations? Do you think they recognize that maybe some of the companies claiming to be in production by a certain date will perhaps not be able to hit those dates?
Yeah, I mean, I can only go into so much details, but I think the utilities are struggling with others not being able to deliver into those contracts, and they're being pushed out to try to accommodate some of these projects that have restarted. In our case, they're not concerned at all about our ability to produce because we've got a long history. We've got inventories enough to cover our obligations, and we've got momentum. But yeah, I mean, I'm hearing rumors that people are short, and I think that bodes well for the future. Some of these utilities are talking about flexing up the quantities on our contracts because they are short with others. So, I mean, we've been doing this for a lot of years. I've been doing this for a lot of years. We never want to be short, and we're not going to be short. So, but some people are going to be and are right now.
Marty, and look, I'm going to ask you this. You're talking about optimizations at the moment, but you can't help but look up and go. And I'm not going to necessarily try to conflate ISR with hard rock here, but some of the ISR guys have had problems with Peninsula, struggling technically. We had both Encore and IsoEnergy, with some issues. That mining's hard, right? That these are good people. these are good people trying to, doing good work, but it's difficult. Are you conscious of that whilst you're doing this optimization thing in terms of you got to be perfect when you come to market?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little different. This is a mine that's operated in the past. We know the capabilities. We also have a good operating team, and conventional mining is different than in situ. I mean, in situ, you're, to paraphrase someone, it's a bit of an underground chemistry set, that you can't really touch with your hands. So you're not quite sure what you're going to get till you get in there and you start running it at full scale. Mining, the hard rock mining, I think we've got a better sense of it. We can stop and move to a new face. Once you start a well going, that well's going, that's it. You don't get to move around. You don't get to go at it from another angle. And I'm not trying to say it's simpler or is simpler to do underground mining, but I think if you're an experienced underground miner, you know how to get the tons that are there.
I think that conventional is going to have a bit of a comeback here, with a lot of the in situ people struggling, and I think that people are going to get a greater appreciation why conventional makes sense in the United States, and it's lower technical risks, and it's easier to define your cost than it is with in situ, because in situ you got to look from the beginning when you put in the well fields right on through restoration. And with conventional, it's quite easy to reclaim your projects relative to ISR. I've done both, and I love ISR in the right circumstances, the right conditions, but it's very frustrating if it's not. And it isn't always the right circumstances. And that's what people don't understand. They just think, well, just because it's ISR, it's low cost, that is, if that's the assumption, it's wrong. Okay, it's not. In the right circumstances, it is low cost and it works well. But it's all about application of the right technology in the right environment. And I think that people are going to see that conventional is going to play a significant role in the United States, larger than people think, when some in the ISR business are going to be, waiting for the uranium to come out of the ground.
Yeah, and it's interesting times at the moment. Like we've seen issues in obviously Paladin struggled then end of last year, and so looking to recover from that. We've got Global Atomic as well. That's political issues that they're struggling with as well. It kind of makes both your strategies of being North American focused and a little bit of Australia in your case, Marty, seem sensible. It's simple in a way, and it kind of feels like the field is clearing in terms of the political will is there now, political support is there, the capital is there for the right projects, the demand is there. Do you feel that the story is getting simpler, Marty, or do you think we've still got some hurdles to overcome? And in if case, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, it's mining, so nothing's. I wouldn't call anything simple. I think that at a macro level, it's there. We're focused on areas. Mining's hard enough. Let's focus on jurisdictions that embrace it. And then you get to nuclear. Let's focus on jurisdictions that embrace uranium mining. And that's what we've chosen to do. So I think from our standpoint, that we'll continue to keep that as a focus. And people can buy into that. People are willing to invest into that. Thankfully for our operating asset, or I shouldn't say our operating assets, but our permitted assets in the U.S., we don't have a large capital requirement, especially at Tunney M. It's largely ready to go. So I think that the risk has been reduced significantly for us, just by the strategy we employed.
Any thoughts, Mark? Final thoughts from you, Mark, about what does the market look like over the next few months?
My gut is that it'll continue to tick up, for all those reasons that we discussed: tightening of supply, people not delivering into their contracts, and then people have to go out and buy in the spot or work out another deal with somebody that is actually producing. It's tough out there. I mean, even for us, we were delayed with this Navajo transport agreement, which legally we didn't need, but we had to do because of environmental, social justice, and the media. but we came out with a great outcome. So, I mean, I think the biggest message I can have people: watch who can produce, watch who can deliver, and beware that particularly some of these new projects that have never produced anything, that require $500 million, $1 billion and a half. They're not all going to come out like they've been advertised as, and any of us can get caught in that. But particularly new projects, brand new, it's not easy, and just watch the space unfold.
Okay. And Marty, from you guys at ISO, what should we be looking out for from you guys in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I would say, things we've talked about, obviously, keep your eyes out on the stuff we're doing up in the basin. Pretty important. That's where we're spending the largest amount of our money. And continue to watch news coming out on Tony M. There will be news coming out in, the next weeks to months. Positive news, I'm assuming. And in addition to that, just, we talked about M&A, and we're a busy group on M&A, and keep your eyes out on that front.
Well, like I said at the beginning, okay, real miners understanding the reality of the situation with real insight. So I appreciate time, both of you today, guys, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Our pleasure.